You're listening to the On Call Empath Show.
All right, guys, we are back, and I am super excited for my next guest. Her name is Wendy Maslin. She helps creatives, empaths, artists, and a lot of different people from around the world overcome trauma. She is an emotional healer, and she's very good at what she does. And that's why it's an honor to have you here, to Wendy. How are you doing today?
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Absolutely. And this is new to you. Like, this is your first podcast. I'm so happy that I get to
It's so
have you on
exciting.
my first one. So
Definitely.
you're right now in Australia, correct?
Yeah, correct. I'm in Melbourne, in
Melbourne.
Victoria. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful
Yeah.
place. I love that area.
Yes.
How long have you been there?
So I've been in Melbourne about 10 years now,
Hmm.
and I originally grew up in a country town on a farm
Hmm.
in central New South Wales, which is very rural. It's
Yeah.
about 5.5 hours west of Sydney and about 8 hours or six to 8 hours, depending on how fast you drive,
Yeah.
from Melbourne. Yeah. So,
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah.
So what kind of caught my attention? I mean, I was obviously looking through all of your social media feeds, and a lot of your videos and the stuff that you have like spoke to me. And one of them was like releasing emotional stuff in the body. And, a lot of the work that you do, especially right now with so much going on politically, I think it's going around in the whole world, but you've actually faced it firsthand. But at least what I'm going through, I mean, as far as the pandemic and everything around the world, it seems like there's a lot of people on edge. We're kind of absorbing, as empaths, I should say, we're absorbing some of that energy. So I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of ask you what you thought about it, and how do you make sense of this
Yeah.
historic time that we're going through?
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been such an amazing learning experience for me in
Hmm.
terms of how I can help other people. Obviously, here in Melbourne, we're still under lockdown.
Yeah.
The lockdown has been going on for, over a year and a half now. So, under some really strict conditions. We're still not allowed to go further than 5 kilometers
Yeah.
from the home. So basically what's happening is it's amplifying a lot of our deeper beliefs and a lot of suppressed emotion,
Hmm.
particularly for me that was already there. And
Right.
so often when with any of our challenges that come up in our present day life, often it's a pattern that's been created from much earlier times that we're still moving through, that we haven't
Mm-hmm.
finished completing yet, we haven't finished growing from yet. And so, often these patterns or beliefs we pick up earlier in life. And a lot of the people that I work with, it's a lot of relationship stuff, a lot of career blockages.
Right.
But it's interesting because my actual program that I offer is called the Freedom Code, which was
Yeah,
something
I saw that. It's
which is funny because it was
yeah.
I didn't choose that name in the beginning because of a
Mhm.
lockdown, but it's just interesting that now I'm actually helping a lot of people through
Yeah.
some of the challenges that are coming up and
Yeah.
being triggered by lockdown. And so how I see it playing out is that the lockdown is triggering any deeper wounding that we've had that hasn't
Mhm.
been resolved from the past around feeling trapped, feeling
Sure.
suppressed, feeling like it's not safe to speak up, it's not safe to stand
Mhm.
out and say how you really feel. It's really triggering
Mhm.
those. And I know particularly for me, in terms of how I've been able to move through and regain my sense of freedom in this particular situation, was actually going back to these earlier memories of times where I did have this suppressed emotion of actually feeling trapped. A lot of people don't
Mm.
realize that, when we think of suppressed emotion, we always think of like grief or sadness or anger, but this energy, this emotion of actually just feeling trapped and stuck
Yeah.
from some earlier memories was actually still in my system.
Mm-hmm.
that needed to be released. And once I actually processed that and
Mm-hmm.
addressed those original issues, then I was finally able to feel relief in the
Mm-hmm.
current situation. And it all made sense. It all
Yeah.
made sense. Wow, it's
And
like exact like for like energy. Yeah.
yeah, and you can feel it. Like, I don't feel like it's over. Like, I mean, I know the pandemic started, last year, and it's like, I'm like ready for it to be over. But I mean, a lot of the people that I coach and the clients and stuff, like they're still going and processing it. So there's two types. There's the people that are dealing with it and just like moving forward, and then there's the people that are like frozen, like they're still like not sure which way to go. And so for those people that are listening on this podcast, this is one of the reasons why I brought Wendy on. She's really an expert in this area. So I want to just start out by asking you, like, how important is it to release these emotions and from our body, just so we can start on like a path of something new, because a lot of people are trapped right now that are actually listening.
Yeah. So firstly, I'd be asking yourself, like, what are some of these beliefs or thoughts that are coming up? And so one of the most common one would be this feeling that it's not safe to speak my truth.
Mm-hmm.
So this is obviously a limiting belief that I identify in a lot of clients that comes up with relationship challenges, career challenges, any relationship challenges, even family challenges, is this a feeling, this limiting belief that, it's not safe to speak my truth. If I speak up, I'll be rejected or, cast aside or something like that.
Yeah.
So asking yourself, like, what is this situation bringing up for me? And it
Mm-hmm.
could be like, it could bring up this fear. It's like, I fear I'm going to miss out on life. That's
Yeah.
definitely common amongst, myself. That was for me and a lot of my girlfriends as well.
Yeah.
So it's identifying, be willing to ask yourself, what are some of the negative thoughts that are coming up, observing them, because often those
Mm-hmm.
negative thoughts that are coming up are actually a limiting belief that's ready to be released.
Yeah.
And noticing what's the pattern, because the same limiting beliefs that will be being amplified right now, if you're
Mm-hmm.
under lockdown under really challenging circumstances, it's going to be those same limiting beliefs will apply to all other areas of your life generally without realizing it.
Right.
So when we release one belief that affects one area of our life, it tends to affect, it has a ripple effect, and
Yeah.
it helps all other areas as well.
Yeah.
So the situation that we're under at the moment is just a really unique experience, looking at it from a different angle, because
Mm-hmm.
most people are motivated to change by, relationship challenges. They don't want to get a divorce, so then they seek help.
Yeah.
Or, they can't find someone, so then they seek help. Or they
Yeah.
really want money, so then they seek help. But it's almost like we don't, the current situation at the moment, the current consciousness, if you like, is actually forcing people in a way to address their
Yeah.
circumstances and address some of those beliefs that are coming up that they never thought that they had to do before. Yeah.
Right. And that's the bulk of I guess a lot of the people that I've spoke to is, it affects every aspect of their lives. I mean, once you have this negative energy, especially the empaths and the highly sensitive people that are tuning in, maybe they've been through like a narcissist abuse, relationship. So for them to start dating and having like some sort of relationship, that's a challenge. And until they actually deal with it and do the work and look inside to put themselves first, because they think like, I mean, what I hear a lot is like, okay, once I get back in a relationship, I'll fall right back how I used to be. And right when they start getting into a relationship, then it's like they go back to the same patterns over and over again.
Yeah.
So I want to just pick your brain on that. So I mean, let's say someone's listening right now and they've been through like some sort of traumatic experience with abuse, or somebody that maybe long time ago, a parent, family member, or whoever. How do they move on now? Like, how can they release their energy? And that's some of the stuff that you do with your clients. So I'm just wondering if you can walk me through the steps of what
Yeah.
you personally do.
So the biggest thing to understand is the importance of feeling and releasing the emotions in the
Mhm,
body, because emotions are a vibration,
mhm,
and like attracts like. So a lot of people, what they don't realize is that when like attracts like, in terms of the people and the situations that we attract into our lives, often it's unconscious, like suppressed emotion in our bodies. And when we release that emotion, when we finally have the courage to actually feel that emotion and then release it,
mhm,
that's when that vibration releases. And that's
mhm.
also when the limiting belief around it releases as well, which is what
Right.
I help people do. And so I always like to give the example of, say, for example, if you're in, at school when you're younger and someone, this happens to almost everyone. I feel it's like you were 4 or 5 years old
Mm.
and, someone says to you, like, I don't want to play with you today. And I actually have a very good, I had to work through this one. I have a bit of fun, but they're like, I don't want to play with you today. And in that moment, you either would have felt the emotion of, sadness, rejection,
Yeah.
you felt grief, you could have felt hungry.
Mhm,
Most people feel sadness. And so often we're not encouraged to actually feel emotion. There's this perception that or belief that, again, that's another limiting belief, that
yeah.
once you start feeling emotion, you won't be able to stop.
Yeah.
And so because we're taught not to feel,
Right.
basically it gets stuck in our systems, it gets stuck in our
Mhm.
bodies when we push it down.
Yeah.
And so, and often it's a normal human reaction. People are like, hey, we've got to get back to school, or someone's like, hey, come over here. We're not encouraged to finish feeling. And
Sure.
so when that happens, whatever thought you're thinking at the time, combined with whatever emotion you are feeling, basically creates the belief. The emotion will
Mhm.
basically cement that belief in place.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, belief is so, I mean, it's like so strong. I mean, if you believe, and it's not easy for people, like you said, like if they had a bad experience on a playground or through a relationship, you don't trust as much. It just seems like, I mean, what I hear is like, I'm broken. I'm never going to be the same.
Yeah.
My life's over. And, I had one person, I mean, she's a single mother and she has like a bunch of children that she takes care of. And she just totally just kind of gave up on life just because of her last couple relationship, because she keeps attracting the narcissist. And it's like she knows she's an empath, and we're working together to really break down like what's going on internally. Let's look at the root cause and why you keep going back to these types of people. Why are you attracted it? And we found out it came from her father. And so it and that was like a aha moment, because putting that two together, it's like that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for acceptance, guidance that I never got as a child. So I would say 90% of the people that I spoke to, it starts from childhood, and that stuff is programmed in their head. And it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be unlearned, but it takes time. I mean, that's the only way in the work.
Well, the fastest way to accelerate that is be willing to
Hmm.
feel the emotions behind that situation,
Hmm.
and locating, where is this emotion sitting in my body.
Yeah.
In that, example of your client, it's like, how did she feel about
Hmm.
her father? Where is that emotion in her body? Is it, is she holding grief? Is it in her chest? Is she
Right.
holding anger in her throat?
Yeah.
And getting her to feel safe to finish feeling that, because
Yeah.
sometimes when we do any type of emotional release, we might
Hmm.
have a bit of a cry,
Yeah.
but sometimes we can be crying from our head, and it might only
Mhm.
be releasing, say, 20 or 30% of that emotion.
Yeah.
And we want to release it all the way.
Yeah.
We want to feel all of that. Yeah,
And
that's how. Yeah.
I mean, what I found very interesting, and I'm sure you can relate with this with your clients, is um, a lot of people, they say like they have physical issues. Like this woman had migraines, and it
Mm,
would only it would like something would happen, like her back would hurt or she would get a migraine around certain people. And that's what I would say is like, okay, you now we're onto something. You need to learn how to protect yourself, build a shield. And sometimes grounding works for some people, sometimes journaling, sometimes just getting 6 feet away from this person. But what's your take on that? Like, I mean, I know I've experienced this where I've been around certain negative people and then I start feeling sick, like from my stomach. I'm like, what
That's
is going on? And
big
your body
deal.
never lies.
Exactly. So the big is actually release feeling that emotion in your body. And I'll tell you a story, and this, I know a lot of people relate to this, but
Yeah.
a few years ago when I was working in a really high pressure corporate environment, I had the worst headaches. Like I was getting such bad headaches to the
Mhm.
point where I was actually starting to lose my memory.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
that bad. It went on for quite a long time. I know my performance at work was suffering, and I didn't really, at this point in time, there was a part of me, I'd already done a lot of emotional release work in my body, but I just couldn't crack this particular
Mhm.
this particular issue. And so, cut a long story short, it was actually stored anger that was
Mhm.
in my, so it was,
Yes.
and it was, there was this belief that, it's not safe to
Mhm.
express anger. And that's something that I help a lot
Right.
of my clients do, is feel safe. So when I was finally able to actually release and feel the anger, so a lot of people have a belief that we need to, if we're angry, that we need to actually, spray that anger on someone, or like beat them or something, or, get a baseball bat, but you can actually just finish feeling that anger in your body. So for me, it was a matter of anchoring that anger, feeling it all in my head, in my
Yeah.
neck, and then it actually released. And
Yeah.
so, and then, within 3 sessions of doing that,
Right.
my memory had returned. And so
Mhm.
I always like to describe the mechanics of that, because people don't realize how easy it can be when you're actually willing to feel your emotions
Sure.
and feel them in your physical body. So, you could cry for 3 hours from your head when you're thinking about the emotion,
Hmm.
but as soon as you actually come down into your
Hmm.
body, feel where that emotion is
Yeah.
actually located and feel it there.
Right.
And obviously, this is what I help people do, is basically keep them anchored down in their body so that they can
Hmm.
finish feeling that emotion. Because sometimes we can speak excessive speaking can be a form of disassociation from
Yeah.
the actually feeling the emotion. Sometimes we want to talk it out. We could talk for hours and hours about from a place of sadness, but sometimes we actually just need to just sit in that
Yeah.
sadness, and it doesn't need to take long. Yeah.
Yeah. And whoever's listening, I mean, showing your emotions is not, I mean, it's not weak, because I know a lot of people through the recovery process, they've made so many leaps and bounds just from crying, because it releases so much, like even anger, like it just releases and cleanses you. So I know, like sometimes, I mean, especially for men, it's like, dude, don't cry like you're, in front of people. Because a lot of men that could be listening to this as well, it's like we hide our emotions. And if, like, especially with our spouse, or, if you're with a female in a relationship, w- it's not, it's not accepted. It's not manly to show emotion. Where I say, like, to all my clients, men and women, fuck that. Just, you can cry and be with the person who really gets you, because there's only going to be a handful of people that get you. And when I speak to someone, I know right away as an empath, like, okay, we're on the same wavelength. I mean, I don't know if you remember when I first zoomed with you, it was like, there was like a few words that you said, and I knew you were on the same wavelength as me, and we understand each other because we've kind of went through similar things growing up, but it's, we've
Yeah.
learned from it, and now, like, you're giving back and you're helping so many people and changing the world, and I think that's awesome. And so, but with that said, I just want to, like, switch gears here real quick. You talk about twin flames, and this is something that I haven't really had anyone talk about in all of my episodes, and I hear
Yeah.
that quite a lot, and you seem to know a lot about that. Can you
Yeah.
share that with our audience real quick? And
Exactly.
Tell
Yeah.
us.
Um, with twin flames, I mean, there's so much information out there,
Yeah.
and for a lot of people, it can be really overwhelming. But I will share my perspective and my take on it, and how I've been able to help people through that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with the twin flame dynamic, generally, it's a relationship situation where you have such strong mirroring trauma bonds that it's not necessarily a relationship or a dynamic that you can just break up and escape from.
Yeah.
So a lot of twin flame, I call it a dynamic, not a relationship, because often, you can be in a separated situation. You could be in separate countries. Often one can be married to someone else, but there's just this overwhelming, strong attraction that
Mm-hmm.
you can't explain. It might make no logical sense, but you keep being drawn back to that person.
Yeah.
And the
Even if
difference,
they're not good for you, is that?
exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
this interests me. I can talk about this all day, but no one's really, covered this topic. I mean, trauma bond, all that stuff. It's like it behooves me to see people keep going back to the same person that's hurting them, and they can't see it, even though their friends are like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like this person is treating you like crap," and they can't see it, and it takes time. And then obviously, like something along the lines of it would take something horrendous to happen for them to
Yeah.
finally let go. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it's crazy.
So it's in a twin flame situation. What I help people do is to feel safe acknowledging that craziness, because a lot
Yeah,
of time people will say, oh, just, cut them off and move on, or,
yeah,
oh God, or they'll be often judged by their friends and family for staying in that,
yeah.
or staying connected to that person. And sometimes that's the worst thing you can do to someone in a twin flame
Hmm.
relationship. With a twin flame relationship, you need to stick to the path, you need to stick to the course.
Hmm.
And I basically, with myself and with my clients, was like, all right, I'm not going to try and like cut this off and move on. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to
Hmm.
notice one of these triggers that are coming up. So with a twin flame, and this is the same with any, trauma bonded relationship,
Right.
the two of you both share the exact same limiting beliefs and suppressed emotion.
Hmm.
And that's really important to realize. And so for yourself, when you actually release your own suppressed emotion and your own limiting beliefs, because like attracts like, you'll stop attracting that particular person, or in the context of a twin flame, you'll stop having that addictive pull to them, or
Hmm.
that really strong attachment where you can't let go. And so often these beliefs, as often their subconscious beliefs, will be things, like I'm not good enough. Again, like it's not safe to speak up. It's not safe to speak my truth.
Yeah.
I'll always be abandoned.
Yeah.
These are some of the beliefs. So what it's important to realize that even though the other person might be behaving completely different to you,
Hmm.
you still share the same beliefs. So
Hmm.
often what I see is that it's usually often, a healer.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for one person to be the compassionate, empathic, healing type, and the other
Right.
person they could be displaying narcissistic,
Hmm.
behavior, or really extreme behavior. And so often people trip themselves up because they're kind of like, well, I'm not like that person. If like attracts like,
Right.
I'm nothing like that person. I don't say the same things. And it's like, you won't behave the same, but you both share the same limiting beliefs and the same suppressed emotion. And
Yeah.
so one of you might have a severe addiction, or, there could be a really severe drug addiction,
Hmm.
but, you as the empath, you might be doing all this work on
Hmm.
yourself. It just means you share the same pain. It's just that
Hmm.
one of you needing to do the work, the other one is dealing it with
Yeah.
an addiction. Yeah. And so to bring that power back to you is be like, okay, well, all I need to do for this person to release this addictive hold, this constant pull that I can't let go, in order to release that, I just need to feel where
Hmm.
my suppressed emotion is in my body, and release those limiting beliefs at the
Yeah.
same time. And vibrationally,
Right.
what will happen is either that person will phase out of your life,
Right.
or it'll create space for them to actually come back in a harmonious way. And
Yeah.
when you release that suppressed emotion, it also creates space for them to heal and release
Sure.
it. Oh, yeah.
Very well said. Very well said. And so, just wrapping up here, what I want to do is I want to give you the last word, because I'm sure there's someone out there who listened to this podcast and they're in a place where they might be going through, trapped emotions, where it's in their body, or maybe they've been through a bad relationship, and every day it's like they're reminded of it in some way, shape, or form, where it
Yeah.
affects them, not just physically, but mentally. I mean, you're very good at what you do. And I looked at your Instagram feed, and a lot of the stuff that you talk about is releasing those emotions. So, what can you say to somebody that's listening right now, that as soon as they're done listening with this podcast, they can start maybe using some of these methods? Obviously, you guys, this is not medical advice. So definitely see a physician, if you're looking for medical advice, but this is just uh, our conversation between us. So could you like kind of tell us like what you normally do with your clients?
Yeah. So basically, what I do is I'm helping them basically anchor themselves into their body, which is a combination of different things, but it's called self-directed healing, but
Hmm.
it's basically timeline therapy, combination of breath work, timeline therapy, and inner child therapy.
Hmm.
It works on all levels. So we're talking emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. We're hitting at it from all angles. So
Sure.
most people, when they seek any type of therapy, predominantly it's done on a mental basis. And what I do is predominantly on the emotional basis in order to get the mental relief.
Mhm.
And so the first thing that I would say to people is, firstly, you have to be willing to feel in
Mhm.
order to shift that emotion, shift that suppressed emotion. Because the other thing that is really important that I need to mention is that a lot of people are afraid to feel their emotions because they're scared that they're going to manifest them in future.
Yes. I'm
And
guilty.
what
Oh, I used to be, but I think a lot of
yeah,
people that are listening, that's
yeah.
one of their biggest fears, the future, and that's what causes anxiety.
Yeah, what you need to know is that if you've got suppressed emotion, you're creating from that space. So if you're
Yeah.
holding suppressed emotion of grief or fear in your body, you're still creating. You're just not consciously aware of it.
Yeah.
And so, in order to get the results you need to actually move past, we don't want to try and create a positive, you can still create a positive vibration with your, affirmations and meditation. But what's going to really get you the results and get you the shift that you need and finally break out of those cycles is actually shifting those heavier,
Yeah.
emotions that are stuck in your body.
Yeah.
So that your vibration will naturally rise up
Yeah.
effortlessly. So that's the first thing, is just have the courage. Don't worry that if when you start feeling your emotion that you're going to manifest them, and just be willing to feel. That's the thing
Yeah.
that, and I work through with a lot of my clients as
Yeah.
well, is the fear of feeling, is
Yeah.
that even though you're an empath, I know
We
I've had to.
always feel everything more intensely than like regular people. We have
Yeah.
a lot more emotion.
Exactly. So it's just being willing to feel,
Yeah.
and moving through that fear of feeling all the, often that's a whole other, kettle of fish, is like, what happens when I feel? And
Was
that's the thing.
scary to pull that up. I mean, I don't know if you heard of EDMR. I had a EDMR specialist on one of my episodes, but when they pull stuff out of people, I mean, they are screaming, bawling, and it needs to be taken out. Like it's like
Yeah.
ingrained in our bodies. And that's just one way. I mean, but what you're describing seems like, very interesting. Like,
Yeah, and it doesn't. I think the biggest thing is building your confidence feel.
Mhm.
And so often when people have that first session, and we bring up that sadness, and you feel it actually dissipate, and at the end of the session you feel fine, and you haven't fallen in a heap.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we start small. It's like, let's release a bit of, feel what it feels like to have the courage to feel that emotion, feel it dissipates because you've anchored it properly in your body. And then it's like, oh, and then we go deeper. So it's like, next time it's like, all right, so now we can go into some release, other deeper emotions that are trapped there. And so, I mean, obviously every situation, every client is different.
Right. And I just want to point out to all of you guys that's listening, everyone heals differently. There's no, it's going to take this amount of time if you do this. It's all depends on the person, and there is not a race. Your healing process is your own. So if you go to somebody and they're guaranteeing like you're going to be, 100% run, because it isn't like that. Healing is, for me at least, it's a lifelong journey. I have to keep doing things, and I know I have to do it for the rest of my life. And I tell that to my clients is, you better be willing to do these things, because once you stop, you're going to start slipping back slowly and relapse unless you keep doing the work, which might be for someone like talking to a friend, seeing a great person like you to help them, or, just going out and grounding yourself. There's so many ways, and it might be a combination of things, but don't put a time limit on it. And healing is something that's personal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great point. And there's a lot of people, particularly, actually, it was interesting. I had a client the other day say, oh, don't you get confronted by, the amount of how fragile, human life is, and the things that come up. And the important thing to know is that this whole process of life, it's all, we are evolving. We're always going to be in a place of, it's important to know that it's a place of expansion.
Right.
So if we want to actually grow and expand, then we have to confront some of these emotions and some of these thoughts, some of these difficulties. But when you've got the right tools, then that becomes a lot easier.
You got to be able to trust whoever's helping you, and let them guide you. But you're going to have to go through that door, whatever you're feeling, whether you're trapped in this pandemic and you feel like lost, or you're at a point where you're ready to heal, but you just don't know which direction to go. And so that leads me to ask you, how can we find you? Because I think the world needs to know who you are and where we can find you. You do amazing work, and it was an honor for you to be on my podcast today.
Yeah, thank you. So it's you can go to my website, which is wendymaslin.com. That's WENDY Maslin, MASLIN.com. I'm on Instagram at wendy.maslin, and Facebook, I believe, it's Wendy Maslin, but I believe the actual search bar is Wendy Maslin Healing.
Okay. Guys, check her out. I was impressed. So I pick every person very carefully, and I'm just honored this was your first podcast, and I'd love to have you back and have a discussion with other people and just talk about more about this, because I can talk about all this all day long, and I know you can, because you definitely have a passion for what you do. I can tell.
Love it. Yeah. And it's and a lot of people ask me all the time, they're like, do you ever get drained doing this? And I'm like, oh, I love it. Like, it is just, it's my joy to actually help people gain confidence in feeling emotions. It doesn't need to be this scary thing.
One thing I tell people, like, as far as draining and stuff, if you love what you do and you're giving back, it doesn't feel like you're working. And that's how I feel with my clients. It's like I love helping them, and I'm like, I don't get really drained. I get more motivated because I see the progression. I see somebody changing their lives right in front of me. Like, that's empowering. Like, how could you be drained from that? So
exactly.
So with that said, guys, thanks again for being on my podcast, and hopefully we'll have you back in the future.
Thank you.
Good luck with your move too.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that does it for this episode. share this episode with somebody. If you know this, you think they can, they're going through a hard time, definitely reach out to me or Wendy. We're always here for you guys, and always keep moving forward. Thanks again for being loyal listeners, and stay tuned for the next episode. And we are out.
You're listening to the On Call Empath.